All right, guys, so taking a look now at features of functions, learning target 2.3. So this time we're looking at those 6 features that are dealt with in interval notation, okay? So remember, interval notation, we use brackets, and generally speaking, we use the x to the left of when it's starting, and then the x value of the right when it's starting. So it's not like a point, which gives us an x and a y value. It's just taking the x value of that point, or both those points where it starts and where it ends, and then going from there, okay? So kind of one way to think about it is, let's start with increasing. It's kind of an easy one to see. So if we look at this, we can see at this minimum right here, it's now starting to increase, and it's increasing along that section, okay? And you may say, okay, it's increasing from the 0.23 to 610. That's probably how you want to say it. However, when we deal with an interval, we're just using the x value. So I'd say it starts at 2 and it ends at 6. So instead of having to write those points, we use that interval notation and we write the leftmost x value to the rightmost x value of how it's starting, okay? So kind of a way to think about that is XL, XR, okay? XL, XR. On all of these, it's the x left x to the right x of the point where it starts. You can even put XS for starts and XE for end. I don't know if that one's an easier way to think about it, okay? Now, the range is the one oddball, because range is dealing with y values. It's the lowest y to the highest y value, okay? That's the one oddball out there, all right? So, again, I guess we haven't defined. Increasing is when it's going up. Decreasing is when it's going down. Okay, and when we say up and down, we think in terms of looking left to right, just like we read a book in English, okay? We read it left to right, so that's what we consider going up, going down, okay? Increasing and decreasing. Now, the domain is all the x values, and the range is all the y values, okay? Positive is above the x-axis, and negative is below the x-axis, okay? So we've got increasing here. So now let's talk about decreasing. So decreasing is this section right here, okay? So now, again, we could think in terms of, well, it's going from the point -4.6, okay? But we're thinking in terms of intervals. So it starts here at -4, and then it ends at 2. So this section of the graph is where it's decreasing. So my interval is -4.2. Okay? That's what our interval is. So that's increasing and decreasing, okay? So why don't we go through each one, and we'll talk about increasing and decreasing on each section, and then we can go through domain and range and all that. I think that I like that way better, okay? So actually, yeah, we'll do it for these first two, and then we can, yeah, that'll work. All right, so now when you're dealing with a table, it's a little different, okay? But again, it's y value based, right? Going up, going down was all based on these changes in the y values. So when I look at my y values, I want to see, are they going up or are they going down? So if I start at 2, am I going up or am I going down? Well, 2 to 5 is going up. 5 to 10 is also going up. 10 to 8 is going down. Okay, so I'm going to stop right there for my increasing. So now, here's the weird part. Again, increasing is based off of x values. So even though I start at 2 and I go to 10 and I'm increasing, I actually think in terms of my x numbers. So from -2 to 0 is what my interval would actually be, okay? So even though I take the y values to judge it increasing or decreasing, I use the x values to describe, just like I did down here, right? I used the 4 and the 2, not the 6, not the 3. The 6 and the 3 are like these. Okay, that tells me that it's increasing, but I don't use them. We just use the x values. Okay, now 10 to 8. So now I'm starting. 10 to 8 is decreasing. 8 to 5 is also decreasing, and now I'm at the end. So again, I look at 0, I look at 2, it's decreasing from 0 to 2. Okay? That's how we deal with increasing and decreasing on these graph and the table. Okay? There's the first one. All right, now let's talk about domain and range. So domain is all the x values. So what that means is all the values of x. So if I look at a table down here, okay, it's pretty easy. I start at -2 and I go to 2, left to right. So my domain is from -2 to 2. Okay, it involves all those x values. So now if I'm looking at a graph, I can try to think in terms of those x values as well. But if I'm thinking about it, there's x values all along here, right? Which is why we use that interval. So I think, what's my furthest left? It's at -4. So my domain starts at -4. Then I keep going, keep going, keep going, right? Hitting my graph, hitting all those x values, and it goes till we get to 6. That's where my end is. So from -4 to 6 on my graph is my domain. Okay, now range. Now for range, it's that vertical. Okay, so on the graph, I find my lowest point and my highest point. Okay, and then it's those y values. So from 3 to +10, and I start with the lowest, and go to the highest. So from 3 to 10 is the range. Now when I think about domain and range, okay, it's almost like I take the y values and the x values, and it's like I'm putting my function in a box. Okay, domain and range should surround your whole box. Now, range on a table is a little bit trickier, because you want to think like the domain, 2 to 5. However, is 2 our smallest number? It is. But is 5 our biggest? Nope. 10 is our biggest. So our range would go from that smallest y value to the highest y value. Okay? And that's our range. All right. Let's clear it one more time for these two. All right. So now, positive and negative. So positive is when our graph is above the x-axis. Negative is when our graph is below the x-axis. Okay? So the way we judge it on the table is below are going to be negative numbers, whereas above is going to be positive numbers. Now, if I look at this table, there's no negative numbers, is there? So it's all positive. So from my starting point to my ending point, it's positive. So from -2 to +2, it's positive. Again, we judge positive and negative off the y, but we talk about it off the x. That's the interval we're talking about. Okay. Same with our graph, right? Our graph never goes below, so from its starting to its ending, it's always going to be positive. So from -4 to 6, it's positive, which means it's never negative. So I can do negative, I either hit never or that empty set in these two cases. Okay. Something interesting to note, because it was always positive, notice that that's the same as our domain. Okay, same here, always positive, same as our domain. Also notice that our decreasing started at the beginning of the domain, then went to 2, then increasing started at 2 and went to the end of our domain. Okay, some kind of interesting things to talk about. Also, if we could talk about x and y-intercepts, and max and mins, notice our maximum, is where it stopped increasing. Our minimum was that point where it changed. Okay. All right. So if you haven't already, try some more on your own. So there's the 2 other problems. Try those on your own. Pause the video. Do what you can. Then kind of check your work and see how you go. I'm just going to go through each one. So like I'll go through this and then through that. Okay? All right. So here we go. Okay, so now this one's a little different, right? Because we have 2 points that are increasing. Okay, when that happens, again, we start at the leftmost. So I start at -2. And it increases, 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 until I get to -1. So from -2 to -1, it's increasing. Then we're going to jump, right? Then we're going to jump because it's decreasing. Okay, so starting at that -1 starts decreasing, decreasing, until we get to +1. So my decreasing is from -1 to +1. Then we take a jump from that to that next spot. So now it's increasing again from +1 to +3. Now the way we write this is we do a little U, which represents that we made a jump, but it's still part of our increasing, and we put 1 to 3. Just like with the increasing for decreasing, we're also going to use that U. And now it's starting up here at 3, decreasing until we get to 5. Okay, so from 3 to 5, it's decreasing. Now that kind of helps me out with my domain, right? Because I know I started the furthest left was 2, -2. So my domain starts at -2. I'm increasing, decreasing, increasing, decreasing until I get to 5. So my domain is that whole length, all those x values. Okay, now my range, how low does it go? Well, it goes down here to -2. So my range starts at -2. And then it goes, uses y's, uses y's, uses y's, uses y's, uses y's, up till I get to 7. So it goes all the way up to 7. And there's our range. All right? Now, if there were breaks in our graph, that would, then just like we did over here, right, and use the u's, like say that didn't exist, we'll go from -2 to 1, use that u, then 1 to 5. Okay, same way as if like this whole section was off out of the range, we'd start at -2 to 1, jump 3 to 7. Okay, so not a big deal when that happens. Now, positive and negative. So that y-intercept or x-intercept is where it changes. So it's negative in this small portion. So it starts being negative at -2. And it's negative till we hit that x-intercept, which we'll estimate about -1.6. So then at -1.6, it's positive all the way to 5. So this section is all positive. So starting at that -1.6, it's positive till we get to 5. Okay, and that's what the interval notation of our graph should look like. Now, let's look at increasing, decreasing, domain, range, positive, and negative. Let's start with the easy. Domain, start at -3, end at 9. So domain, -3 to 9. Our range, that's the trickier one. Our lowest point is -5. Highest point is 1. So from -5 to 1. It's the only one that uses the interval notation for the y values. Okay. Then positive and negative. We have starting at -2, it's negative till -1. Then from -1 to 1. Wait, what am I thinking? To -1 to 0, right? That 0 is where it stops being negative and starts being positive. So it's positive from, again, we use the x values starting at 0 to 1. So we go from 6 to 9 is when it's positive. Negative starts at -2, goes till 0. Again, we use that -3 as our starting point till 6. -3 to 6. And there's our interval there. Okay. Now, let's look at increasing and decreasing. So increasing going up, -2 to 5 is up, to -1 is up, to 0 is up, to 1 is up. So is it ever decreasing? Nope, never. Or empty set it. So from -3 to 9 is when it's increasing. All right, and there we go with the intervals. Main thing to remember is don't use y values in it, except if it fits the range, and to make sure you always use brackets and think in terms it's just a portion of the graph.